Hello, my friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts families. So the drama is over, and we do have a new Supreme Court Justice. Brett M. Kavanaugh was voted in, 50 for the yeas, 48 for the nays. And so now the Supreme Court has swung decidedly to a conservative side. So this near party line vote was 50 to 48, capping a fight that seized the national conversation. Oh, most definitely. After claims emerged that Kavanaugh had sexually assaulted women 3 decades ago, which he emphatically denied. Those allegations magnified the clash from a routine Supreme Court struggle over judicial ideology into an angrier, more complex jumble of questions about victims' rights, the presumption of innocence, and personal attacks on the nominees. Yeah, it was ugly. It got ugly quick, and it almost seemed to be not so much about him, but about different things, different topics entirely. And when you're looking at a person that you're going to put in such a position of authority, it's good to have a clear mind, a clear head, and not get too emotionally caught up in things. And that's part of the problem, is getting pulled in emotionally. And unfortunately, there's people on both sides, that end up basically making statements that are just all about emotions, and just these whiplash, emotionally charged statements and positions that really are so divisive, and we don't want to be divided anymore. We need to come together, and we need to work together. And I hate seeing, all these things that are just so divisive time and time again. It really does, it takes away from our ability to be effective as a society to bring about positive change. And so, as we're looking forward, and as this article says off of CNN, Susan Collins just made Brett Kavanaugh a Supreme Court Justice. And, again, this is going to swing things in a conservative, light for sure, because now they definitely have the 5-4 advantage. And so, really, though, my thing is, it swings a lot of the little things, and maybe I shouldn't even say the little things. But when we look at the big things, how much really changes? How much really changes? As we've talked about, the military budget just goes up every year, although now with President Trump, honestly, it's going up faster than it's ever gone. But at the same time, President Obama, outspent President Bush. And President, Bush, obviously, we had tremendous increases with Homeland Security, coming into effect, and oh gosh, so many changes, and the rapid growth of the police state. And yet, with Obama, that just carried on. So, a lot of this, honestly, I view a lot of it as an illusion between the left and the right, because, on some things, for sure, there is differences. And so, you're going to have more conservative voting going on, obviously, when the conservatives are in power. But when you get down to, really the big things, those things don't really change too much when you look at it. There have been different items, that have come up. It's interesting, like we were talking about the other day about, the Clinton and possibly Obama ties to China, and then you have Clinton's for sure ties to China, and then yet, the supposed Russian ties with Trump. Is it all illusion? Is it all just conjecture? Is it all just basically trying to create this phobia? Again, just all about keeping the right against the left against the right, keeping us split and in duality. And, when we look at everything going on, it's definitely still a very dangerous time, but the times have been dangerous for a long time. It's a dangerous world. Practice swimming. Iranian officials warn Netanyahu will be forced to flee across the sea, as we see Benjamin Netanyahu swimming in the Mediterranean while on vacation in the Israeli city of Caesarea. And interesting, he's got a shirt on in the ocean. I guess some people do that. So maybe he's afraid of the ultraviolet rays and the cosmic radiation coming in, and he doesn't want his DNA mutating. Perhaps that's the case there. An official with the Iranian Revolutionary Guards has warned Prime Minister Netanyahu to practice swimming, saying he'll soon have no other choice but to flee the region. It comes as Tehran accuses Israel of spreading Iranophobia. Netanyahu should know there's no way for him There is no way for him except fleeing the region. And so he needs to learn to swim in the Mediterranean. Okay, well, he's out there practicing in the Mediterranean. That was Brigadier General Hossein Salami saying in a Friday address to a group of IRGC commanders and officers in the central Iranian city of Isfahan, as quoted by the Fars news agency. So we know the tension there, and most definitely I would never give Netanyahu a humanitarian award in a million years, but then I wouldn't have expected really, Obama to get a peace award either. I mean, he did, even though the amount of Americans fighting in wars actually increased under Obama. We had more wars under Obama than we had with Bush. And that's one of those illusions that I'm alluding to. We think, the Republicans are the war hawks, but it really doesn't matter who's in office because certain things always go in the same direction in that sense. U.S. to send Israel more F-35s after Moscow supplies S-300s to Syria. Not only that, but S-400s to India in a major arms deal as well that we saw. So there are more goings on and repositioning in this global theater that we are looking at here. And we're seeing a lot of alliances weaken, and we're seeing other alliances strengthen, and we're seeing changing in some of the players going on. And the U.S. will reportedly provide Israel with more F-35s after Russia supplied Syria with S-300 missile systems. Moscow's move came in response to the downing of a Russian military plane, which it partially blamed on Israel. And President Trump decided to lend a hand to America's most devoted ally, following consultations at the highest administration and military levels. This is according to DEPCA, a military intelligence news site which I followed for 20 plus years, said to have ties with the Israeli security services, most definitely. And, that's all very interesting. So Israel's really the U.S.'s most devoted ally, but it feels yet that it's, to me anyway, and, this might be just the way I look at it. It feels like Israel gets the better of the exchanges there and always gets a pass on anything they do, which, is not really right either. As usually their responses are tenfold or 100-fold to anything that happens to them. So we see they're still completely under the Old Testament ways of doing things, with an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, or perhaps 20 eyes for an eye and 1,000 teeth for one tooth, as opposed to turning the other cheek. They don't ever turn the other cheek. And if somebody asks for their cloak, they don't give them their tunic too. So they're definitely not following the New Testament mindset, as they are still completely in the Old Testament and wrapped up in that mindset. And it's very, very obvious. And so it's interesting to see how things run. And is the tail really wagging the dog? That's a question I have for you guys out there. And what a look on that face. Maybe he heard that statement. Is the tail really wagging the dog? Oh, well, I think he has had one of those aha moments. So, Chinese aggressive industry threatens U.S. military complex. Stable budget needed, Pentagon. A new Pentagon report calls China the main threat to U.S. military industrial complex, sounding alarm at declines some critical defense functions due to actions by Beijing, a workforce shortage, and unstable funding. Well, we have seen reports that say that there are way too many out of shape and obese American soldiers. We have also seen reports stating that the low unemployment rate is kind of hurting their ability to get good qualified candidates. Let's hope there's no draft anywhere's coming soon. That would not be something that most people would embrace. But when you look at the numbers, and let's really look at the numbers, guys, does this really bear out as truth? While multiple countries pursue policies to bolster their economies at the expense of American manufacturing center, none has targeted our industrial base as successfully as China. The report, titled Assessing and Strengthening the Manufacturing and Defense Industrial Base and Supply Chain Resiliency of the U.S., says. So this document looks at other problems such as decline of certain sectors, namely shipbuilding, as well as a lack of skilled workforce and unstable flow of contracts for strategic manufacturers whose highly niche factories sit for years without work. But most of that can be fixed by a stable and predictable funding flow from the Department of Defense, which has already secured a record $719 billion budget for next year. Yes, you heard right. $719 billion. I'm not kidding, dude. I am not kidding. He just can't believe it. He must be getting a cut on that. I know somebody is. Who's getting a cut on that $719 billion? So the document singles out Beijing, branding it as a significant and growing risk to the supply of materials vital to the U.S. military and accusing it of aggressive policies. And yeah, they've made inroads. They're doing, their economy is growing. Their influence is growing. They're using their resources in a very efficient manner. Yet, when we look, we probably, let's see if we have any data. 2017 military budgets by country. Here we go. And we're just going to go straight down here all the way to number one. And boy, I wonder who's number one. Who do you think number one is? Okay, U.S. 610. We know that turned into 700 billion in reality, right? China, 228 billion. That's no amount to sneeze at, but still. 228 billion to 700 billion. It's basically less than 1/3 of what the U.S. is spending. Less than 1/3. Now, granted, they're a power on the rise. They are. And there's no way to look around that. Look at this. Saudi Arabia, number 3. What the bleep? What are they doing up there at number 3? That really speaks volume, doesn't it? 69.4 billion? You mean they actually passed the Russia? Are you kidding me? They have, wow. Now I've been watching this forever. 66 billion for the Russians. Saudi Arabia, $69.4 billion. Whoa. Yeah, so here's the Russian phobia. And the Russians are spending less than 1/10 of what the Americans are spending. Less than 1/10. And there's India. And then we go to France, UK, Japan, Germany, and South Korea. So we could see that when we put the US and its allies and what they're spending up against what China, Russia, and their allies are spending, it's not even close. Not even close. It's not even remotely close. So, it is pretty damn laughable for Iran to tell Netanyahu to get used to swimming because Iran couldn't do anything against them. And You know, everybody's so worried about Iran building nuclear weapons. Well, at least the Israelis are. And the Israelis already have a nuclear arsenal, and we don't even know how big it is. But it's probably fairly substantial. And all their technology is excellent. Yes, dude, it's excellent. Yes, it's excellent. Not to be surprised. You should not be surprised about that. Okay. So, it's all very interesting. And it's all really sales. You know, look at how they're selling this. Look at how they're selling this. It's all pretty interesting. Now, jumping over, changing gears, getting back to what's going on this planet with all the changes. We have hundreds of birds dropping dead from trees in Poland. Some 200 jackdaws, which are like crows, were found dead in a Warsaw district. A woman reported seeing the birds just literally falling dead out of trees. That's curious. And very, very curious. And so they don't know really what has killed them. And we've seen cases like this all year long. Now, the mysterious Min lights that spook scientists and the Aboriginals in the outback of Australia. So these Min lights are like spirit lights or orbs. And I have seen lights like this, you know, many times in my lifetime as well. And it's a mysterious phenomenon that has spooked so many people in the outback of Australia. Is there any scientific proof that they are real? Or is it just Aboriginal folklore that's been passed down? The lights has been described by witnesses as floating, fast-moving balls of color that glow in the night sky and talk to people. Or they stalk people. Maybe they talk to some people as well. Maybe if those people are in tune to them, they will talk to them. So leaving some people feeling confused and frightened. Sometimes the lights are blue, other times they are white or yellow. I've seen the blue ones many times. Actually up in Connecticut. In Queensland, the Boolia Shire Council notifies visitors that they are in the land of the Min lights and they might spot them as they drive for the next 120 kilometers. And the Kimberley of Western Australia, some Aboriginal people believe the Min lights are the spirits of the elders. As a kid growing up, the old people used to tell me the Min lights were old people's spirits looking after the country. And that was Wyndham local James Birch. Mr. Birch, a Balangara ranger, said everyone from his childhood grew up hearing stories. If you lived in the Kimberley, you would have experienced spotting a Min light at least once in your life. And so we've seen a lot of interesting things. We certainly have. So what does science say? Well, Curtis Roman, a senior lecturer at Charles Darwin University, is gathering stories from Indigenous Australians about the Min lights as part of an ongoing research project. Dr. Roman said there were several scientific theories, probably swamp gas from Uranus, of course. That's always one of the main theories, especially when we're talking about any theory that involves wrecks from leak project. One is that they are a mirage. Natural gases, see, this is exactly what we were talking about, or warm air and cold air coming together. Some of those other theories are that they are bioluminescent insects, owls, or birds. Though he is only in the early stages of his research, Dr. Roman said that all the indigenous people he has interviewed so far, they do believe in them, and they described how frightened they felt when they saw the lights. So, have any of you experienced anything like that? I would love to hear your stories on that one. So, are we going to be swallowed by enormous sinkholes? Huge methane craters fissuring the Barents Sea formed like the recently exploding methane craters in Siberia. Cracked gas chambers. We have a theme going here, guys. Cracked gas chambers in the seabed south of Svalbard. I'll get that right one of these days. They could blow out and create craters that are up to 30 meters deep, say scientists, exactly as in Siberia recently. So researchers have found more than 100 craters in the seafloor near Bizernoya, the southernmost island in the archipelago of Svalbard. Some of these craters have a diameter of 1,000 meters. That's pretty big. The craters formed when pockets of gas hydrates exploded out of the seafloor. Now, scientists at the Center for Arctic Gas Hydrates, Environment and Climate, or otherwise known as CAGE, at the UIT, the Arctic University of Norway, have collected new geophysical data on the craters in the area. And the craters are what remain after a methane gas explosion, or blowout. So methane gas chambers formed under the seabed during the last ice age. Up until the end of the ice age, they were capped by kilometers thick layer of ice. They have also been kept in place by frozen methane gas known as gas hydrates. When the ice melted, the gas chambers collapsed one by one. The blowouts may have occurred over a couple of days. But these blowouts must have involved enormous forces at the bottom of the Barents Sea, since the holes have been blasted out of solid bedrock. And the researchers at Tromsø expect further blowouts, as some gas chambers have not yet blown and others are slowly building up pressure again. So we have mysterious giant holes in Siberia. Only a few years ago, reindeer hunters on the Jamal Peninsula in northernmost Siberia also discovered several mysterious giant holes in the ground. That is large. Look at the size of that hole. Look at these people up here, and look at the size of this hole. This is crazy. That is massive. Russian scientists eventually determined the cavities had filled with methane gas and subsequently collapsed. Wow. Think about that, and think about all the permafrost that's melting. Think about all the things we got going on. Think about that poor guy from this morning's video that walked in his backyard and went and fell 25 feet down a sinkhole. We have a lot of wild changes going on, and look at the size of these holes. You know, it's really interesting times that we're in, my friends, and you never know what's going to happen next. And of course, this is one of the worst possibilities. A supervolcano that could destroy humanity is ready to erupt, and NASA's trying to figure out how to contain it. And of course, this is Yellowstone. And so, as this is saying, Yellowstone erupts roughly every 600 years. This is on BusinessInsider.com. And it's been about 600,000 years since it last exploded. Most of the time we see numbers that are closer to like 780,000. But either way, it is definitely overdue. Or you could look at it as being, time is definitely ticking. And an eruption at Yellowstone National Park could lead to the end of human civilization. However, NASA has a plan that could prevent such an explosion and could also create a geothermal plant to generate electricity. So, how would that work? Well, it turns out they really want to basically pump water down in there to cool it. But when we look at this right here, roughly every 100,000 years, there's a supervolcano explosion somewhere. The consequences of which can be very, very fatal. If Yellowstone were to erupt, it would result in worldwide hunger and a volcanic winter and the cooling of the lower atmosphere. According to UN estimates reported by The Guardian, an eruption could leave us with just enough food reserves for about 74 days, and that's it. So, NASA researchers consider cooling it by water. The hotter it gets in the volcano, the more gases it produces, and there goes that gas production again. Another theme we have building here. The magma continues to melt, and the area above the magma chamber rises, and when the heat exceeds a certain threshold, an explosion is inevitable. So the logical solution would be to cool the supervolcano. To cool the volcano, you need very large amounts of water in that. And in theory, you would have to feed it into the volcano, but implementation is virtually impossible. Building a big aqueduct uphill into a mountainous region would be both costly and difficult, and people don't want their water spent that way, said Brian Wilcox of JPL Lab. People are desperate for water all over the world, and so a major infrastructure project where the only way the water is used is to cool down a supervolcano would be very controversial. Well, maybe, but it wouldn't be so bad to stop the eradication of the human species at the same time, would it? Maybe that would be worth it. But NASA has an alternative solution, drill 10 kilometers deep. There's that 10 kilometers. They always are reporting these 10-kilometer earthquakes. Right on the nose, 10 kilometers. Yeah, it was 10 kilometers deep. It's just an arbitrary number, right? they're going to drill 10 kilometers deep into the supervolcano and pump water down under high pressure. This will slowly lower the temperature day by day. Above all, it's important to drill into the sides of the volcano instead of directly at the tip of the magma reserve, because drilling there could even accelerate the eruption of the volcano. The catch is that the plan comes with a hefty price tag, $3.46 billion. So when you weigh up the benefits, like the fact that we could prevent the end of mankind in the long run, yeah, it seems worth the cost. Don't you agree? And over here, Yellowstone volcano eruption. How often do large hydrothermal blast eruptions occur? So we've seen a lot of that. We've seen a big uptick in the geysers going on. And in the boundaries of Yellowstone National Park, there's approximately 500 geysers and 10,000 hydrothermal features. The geysers are some of Yellowstone's most striking features, but also some of the most potentially dangerous ones. And so, according to the USGS, Yellowstone Volcano Observatory, these hot water features are a source of frequent eruptive activity. How often do large Yellowstone hydrothermal eruptions occur? Yellowstone's volcano is estimated to have last erupted about 640,000 years ago, and then 1.2 million years ago, and then 2 million years ago. So there you have it. Hydrothermal eruptions are incredibly more frequent, and data collected in the past 16,000 years show that they are something to watch out for. Although they are rare events on the human timescale, the potential for additional future events of the sort in Yellowstone National Park is not insignificant. Based on the occurrence of large hydrothermal explosions, events over the past 16,000 years, an explosion large enough to create a 100-meter wide, 328-foot wide crater might be expected every few hundred years. On average, these happen every 700 years, and at least 25 past eruptions have created craters wider than 328 feet. And so these eruptions occur when shallow reservoirs of boiling water underlie the volcano's thermal fields. These eruptions are violent and dramatic events, spewing vast amounts of scorching water, steam, mud, and rock fragments. And they can spew jets of water as high as 1.2 miles high and leave behind craters between tens of feet and more than 1.2 miles in diameter. And so the ejected material spewed during these eruptions can be found as far as 1.8 to 2.5 miles from the craters. That's pretty impressive. And so the USGS estimates that major volcanic eruptions at Yellowstone occur at intervals about 600 to 800,000 years. And so we are basically due. And let's just hope it doesn't happen in our lifetime. But the fact that we have, for one, the grand solar minimum going on increases the likelihood. The fact that we have a pole shift underway, well, that also, it doesn't bode well in our favor. And then if it is true that there's really these large bodies, planetoid or actually stars or stellar cores, all that would add to the likelihood of an eruption. So let us hope not. But we see a lot of volcanoes erupting everywhere, a lot of volcanic activity, and it's just constantly increasing. Kerinci volcano, and this is in Sumatra. Frequent explosions, ash emissions there, up to 14,000 feet. We have a Beko volcano in the Kuril Islands, throwing ash 2.8 miles up in the air. And so, this is up in Russia. Sangay volcano as well. This is in Ecuador. And so, but this is just a few. I mean, we have so many volcanoes going off right now all over the world. And the interesting part is it's been perhaps a cycle that's developing where we see an intense increase in the volcanic activity, and then that kind of stabilizes, and then we see a round of huge deep earthquakes. And then now again we're seeing another uptick again on the volcanic end of it, including potentially Kilauea potentially starting to wake up again as well. So it's interesting, and these cycles are going to go on for quite a while because we're just getting started. So, pull up a chair and some popcorn and enjoy the show as best as you can. And while you're doing that, you might as well prepare and get yourself organized with ample food, storage, all the prepping materials that you're going to need. Everything from shovels and axes, things along those lines, to emergency lights, power generators, whatever it is that you need to do in your area, as well as banding together with like-minded people and building communities together. And we could view these things as just all the obvious negative features that they bring, and we could also view it as a time to change our mindset and to get closer to people, to grow closer as a community, to start to work together, to start to get past our differences, and to actually change the world in a positive manner. So it's all how we look at things. And so let's not panic. Let's just prepare. And let's lend hands out to each other and build our communities as we do this and grow stronger together. So please do thumbs up to support the channel. Go ahead and subscribe and click the bell so you get all the notifications, and share with as many people as possible so we can wake up as many. And prepared people now will be less panicked people later, as we see that these events basically are happening everywhere, and they could happen to us tomorrow. We just don't know. May you guys always be blessed with abundant peace, love, happiness, and well-being. God bless, my friends, and namaste.